It's time for another episode of The Player and the Journalist, hosted by Karson Harris and David Vick. Karson is a former All-American at Drexel, the program's all-time leading goal scorer and the CAA's leader in draw controls. I'm a journalist covering women's lacrosse since 2019 and the founder of Lacrosse Extras.
Woo-wee. Still trying to catch our breath after that Drexel Stony Brook game, okay? We will discuss that, yay or nay, in which we answer the question, are we all in or all out on these four teams following this weekend's games? Those teams are JMU, UVA, Navy, and Penn State. Our final topic will be conference bid predictions for the ACC, Big Ten, Ivy League, Patriot League, and Pac-12. And let's just say it's a good thing we are doing that last because that is a lot of math involved for Karson and I, and we might not have any brain cells by the time we finish that segment. So we will do that last. But Karson, starting off with Drexel Stony Brook, your alma mater. That game just ended today. It was a really interesting game, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, we started out really hot. I was really excited. I thought like this is going to be um a battle back and forth, and they went on that run where I think it was like 4 goals, and Stony Brook went on that run where it was like 4 goals in a minute and 26 seconds or something, I think. And really from there it was still kind of a battle, but I was just kind of that like feeling that Stony Brook felt kind of in control of the game. Um which I was pretty bummed to see because I actually thought Drexel was doing really well. That Stony Brook's defense is really, really hard to beat historically. And I thought Drexel was finding the holes in that defense pretty well. Like even through the end of the game, I thought they had open cutters, which doesn't really happen that often with the Stony Brook defense. So I was proud of them. I thought they did well. I thought 18-11 was an unfortunate score because the game felt closer than that. But yeah, it was fun to watch and surprisingly pretty clean.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I thought it was a very well officiated game.
I agree.
It was played well by both teams as far as the physicality, which I definitely thought Drexel was pretty physical with Ellie Macera. I think that was part of the game plan, which it didn't slow her down. I mean, I don't want to say it didn't slow her down. She still scored 7 goals. I mean, that's just what she does. But I thought it was good. So I'll just start with Drexel. I thought they got off to the perfect start. It was 3-1, and then it was 4-2, and then I want to say it was 5-3 in the second quarter, at the very beginning of the second quarter, and then Stony Brook ended up going into the half up 9-5. But not only was Jenna Cook-Woko just standing on her head, I mean, this is part of the reason why I think they got off to the perfect start. She wasn't making ordinary saves. She was making really tough saves in that first quarter. And you could see she was fired up. We posted one of them on our Instagram, and like to make those are momentum changing saves. When you make a save you're not supposed to make, and she was insane. I mean, was it 5 saves in the first 6 minutes? I mean, it was crazy.
I mean, and that's just like such a defeat, like to be the other team when you're taking shots that should be going in and they're not going in. Like that's just such a momentum shifter. I mean, I think she finished the game with 13. I think it was 13 saves she ended up having. Like her and Belle McHugh. Also, I wanted to shout out Belle because I thought like she had a couple of huge plays in the beginning. She had an interception and a check to cause Stony Brook to turn it over, and I was like, what is happening? Like they are cleaning them up. Like I thought between Jenica and Belle, I was so impressed with Drexel's defense to start the first quarter.
Yeah, and not only was Jenna Cook-Woko making all the saves, Stony Brook was making none of the saves. So yeah, Stony Brook has a major problem at goalie, and we will have to discuss that. I think Drexel, like we said, Jenica was making all the saves, and then Drexel on the other end, they scored on 5 of their first 6 shots, which is good because they barely had any shots at all.
I was going to say they scored on 11 of their 13 in the game. They only
11
had
to 15.
Oh, really? Our Drexel's article said 13. I might have, but they either way, it was like a really high percentage of shots. Like it was the shot percentage was like I guess 15, then it was like 31 to 15 or something was the shot comparison. Like
yeah.
Luckily, Drexel was making all their shots.
Yeah, so that was like I said. I think Drexel got off to the perfect start, and then I do want to touch on that 4-goal run that you mentioned. That was hard to watch as a fan. just because it was so avoidable if you were Drexel. There were so many. Okay, so in the second quarter, Stony Brook scored 4 goals in a minute and 26 seconds. They went from down 5-3 to up 7-3. And then obviously they ended the half up 9-5, I want to say it was. Okay, so 2 of the goals could have easily been defended by Drexel. In transition, coming off the draw, I sent you one of the clips,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like Stony Brook barely has any players on the field, and Drexel is still super spread out. So Ellie Macera just goes one-on-one and scores. Like you have to have some situational awareness, knowing that Ellie Macera is Ellie Macera. She has the ball, slough in. Your defender is probably. I mean, we couldn't even see the defender or the offensive player coming on and the TV screen. She was nowhere to be found. Okay, so that was frustrating to watch. That was super easily avoidable. And then one of them, I mentioned that Drexel was playing physical with Ellie Macera. One of them, I don't know who the defender was, but she was throwing checks, like being a pest on defense, which is good. But she got her feet just flat-footed. She got caught flat-footed. And so if you're defending Ellie Macera, you got to keep your feet moving at all times. You can't rest for a single second, because what's going to happen is she's going to run right past you like she did. So that was tough to watch. And then this was also tough because if you're Drexel, obviously Stony Brook in everyone's eyes is the better team, but I don't think they were so much better than Drexel. I thought Drexel had their opportunities, and one of them was with 3:29 to go in the second quarter, they went a woman up. Do you know how long they had the ball, Karson, before they threw the ball out of bounds?
Oh, was this Drexel did this? You said?
Yes.
Oh, it was like 15 seconds. I remember being like,
It was actually 2.
yeah, I remember being like, oh no.
Yes. They went, just for fans that did not watch it, they went a woman up at 3:29. As soon as the ref blew the whistle for play to continue, she throws the ball out of bounds.
Oh, I was thinking of a different time. I don't know if they were
Oh.
women up in the time I'm thinking of, but there was another time we threw it just right out of, like, it was tipped off somebody's stick and went right out of bounds. And I was like,
Yeah.
no.
And it's like, you can't do those things if you're trying to pull an upset. And so that was tough. Drexel wasn't great clearing the ball. I think they had 4 failed clears. I think they were 14 of 18. And so if you're trying to pull the upset, you got to do all the little things right. Protect the ball. They won the ground ball battle. I think they won the ground ball battle by 1. So that's
really grit.
Yeah. But it was just frustrating to watch them do the little things not so great.
I do have to, I mean, obviously, we do our best to do unbiased here, but I can't not be biased toward Drexel in a conversation like this. But I do have to defend us a little bit in that, like, a lot of goals I do think were easily avoidable, but, like, every goal, if you look at it and you're from an analyst point of view, there's going to be something that you can point at and be like, well, if that hadn't happened, they wouldn't have scored. Like, that's almost always true, like, oh, her ponytail was turned, or like, oh, she had her feet, like she was forcing her the wrong way. Like, I do think that's just like lacrosse. Like, if everyone was doing everything perfect, then like we wouldn't, goals wouldn't be scored. But I do think that it was honestly, from my opinion of it, is that I do think it was really just like they had opportunities. Like, Stony Brook was playing sloppy. They weren't playing like crisp. They weren't playing perfect. Jenica was making saves. Like, they had opportunities to capitalize, and they were doing things like throwing it out of bounds, throwing interceptions, like, and that was the part that was frustrating as a fan for me personally, was most of that stuff, because it was like sometimes people as they're defending are going to make mistakes. That's the nature of it. And typically, like, you hope that your goalie makes a save, or you hope there's a slide that comes, that like, that just kind of is part of lacrosse to me. But the second chances that felt like were really missed were my huge things. Like, there could have been some pretty big momentum shifters in that game. And I just didn't feel like Drexel capitalized on them. And I was pretty bummed about that, because I thought that was like that's the point, like you were saying, like, for an upset to happen, like, those sorts of things have to be on. And honestly, they have a lot of freshmen on the field right now. Drexel does. Like, they're a pretty young team. I think they have like their older girls, obviously, that have been on the field forever, but there were a couple of big moments by freshmen today. And I think that was kind of reflected in those second chances that we gave away. was just that like there were some mistakes that you were like, oh, they were just young. Like they were just mistakes made by young players that you were like, you'll learn, that'll get better. But like right now you need these games to learn from it. And I feel like that happened to him a couple times. I mean, mistakes from seniors as well, but mostly like I felt like, and there was a level of inexperience there on occasion.
Yeah, I think, so just focusing on the offense, you mentioned second chances. Corinne Bednarik has got to be more assertive next time they play Stony Brook, there's a good chance they'll play them in the CAA championship. I mean, that's what it's setting up to be. I love Corinne. She might be my favorite player. She only had 3 shots. She had a goal on each of those shots. She's got to take more shots. She's Drexel's best player. On the other side, you have Ellie Macera, Stony Brook's best player, and she took 11 shots, scored 7 times.
Here's the thing, though, and this is why Stony Brook's defense is so difficult for a team like Drexel, because you can't drive. You cannot be a driver against a Stony Brook team, against a Stony Brook defense. Like, trust me, from experience, I can tell you, like, you just can't do it. There's not enough space. So I think, like, the goals that Drexel or Corinne scored were off of cuts. But there's a lot of other things that have to happen in order to score off of a cut versus Corinne, who normally is, like, a driver and beats a lot of people 1v1, is, like, you can't do that as much against a Stony Brook defense. So I see what you're saying. I agree. And she could be cutting more and there could be more shots, but it's hard to generate shots as a driver, which I think Corinne's typically more of a driver than she is a cutter. So I think that could be where that, like,
that's fair. But that leads me to my next point. For the first, so I didn't get to watch the fourth quarter, but for the first 2.5 quarters, I thought Drexel their positive was also their weakness. They were very patient offensively, and they had some decently long possessions, but they weren't willing to make the tight window throws, which you have to make against Stony Brook's zone. And so, like, there were a few times I would screenshot it. I'm like, she's open in the middle. Make it's not a whole lot, but this is D1. This is against Stony Brook, a top 20 team. The windows are going to be tight. Stony Brook was making those feeds. Drexel was not, at least for the first 2.5 quarters. And it's one of those things where you're going to have turnovers when you're trying to force the ball into the middle. I don't even want to say force. That's where you beat a zone is in the middle. I think that's the common belief. And so I was like, make the throw. You gotta be willing to turn the ball over going for a goal, then just wait, because they had a few times where they fed the middle where the person was wide open, and that's great. But she's not always going to be wide open. You have to be willing to make those. So that was a little frustrating to watch from Drexel's offensive standpoint, because the opportunities were there. And I think what compounds it for me, why it was frustrating, is because Stony Brook's goalies weren't making any saves. So get the ball inside.
Get it on frame.
Yeah, so I don't know. That was a little frustrating. And I also think, not just with the goals, but like, get the ball in Corinne's stick more often. She's your best player. Obviously, you want to work the ball around, but let her dictate where the offense goes. Reverse the ball to her more often so she can get more touches. She needs to have the ball because she's the most dangerous player. If she has the ball, Stony Brook's defense is going to be focused on her a lot more than they are if a freshman has the ball. So they got to find a way to get her more involved next time. And it's going to be tough. They're going to be at Stony Brook. So
yeah. Speaking of that, I thought it was, and I see both sides of this, but to start the game, Corinne and Macera were not matched up on the circle. They had a freshman, I think, on Macera, or I think it was Alex Wall's sister, maybe. I don't know. They had somebody on Macera who was not Corinne. And I think the goal of that was, like, if we can get it to Corinne, we're getting it away from Macera, and Corinne's good enough to get it. But, like, it should have, like, 3 draws in. That was not happening. So I was surprised. They did eventually make the switch, and it made it a lot better, and Corinne started winning more draws, and I think that got her more involved. And then she had, like, 2 goals in a row. I think that all kind of happened around the same time. And, like, I don't know if this is true of Corinne, but, like, I know for me personally, like, when I was winning draws, I was scoring goals. Like, when I wasn't winning draws, I had a hard time scoring goals. Like, those kind of came together for me. And I don't know if it's the same thing for her, but I wonder if it is, because as soon as she started winning those, they put her on Macera, and I think Massera got frustrated. There started being more fouls on the circle that went Drexel's way, and that started to look a lot better, I thought, in the third and fourth quarter. So I wish they'd made that change sooner, because I thought that was actually a positive for them as they battled back in the draw stats a little bit there in the second half.
And also, I think you're spot on because, well, before I get to that point, I want to say at one point it was like 8-2, 9-2. Stony Brook was killing them at the circle. Like, it was bad. They dominated time of possession because of that. And so yeah. If I sound like I wanted Drexel to win, I'll be honest, I did, because it's been a crazy season and I wanted to see the upset. I also wanted it really bad for Corinne Bednarik because she has been there for 5 years and they've never beaten Stony Brook. But also what you're saying, by putting her at the draw, that also gives her opportunities to dodge in transition when the defense isn't set. So, man, I think there are so many things that Drexel can take away from this game and be like, let's make this change. And we're going to be right in it at the next time. The only thing that worries me is if they play Drexel again, you can't count on Cuoco to have 13 saves every game. Like,
you almost can. I mean, she is insane. You almost can. Like, I don't know how she does it. But no, I agree with you. Like, no, Prop 13's a lot. But like, if you need the girl to show up, she will show up. That is something about Jenica that she's proven to us, because she's pretty. The other thing that I just wanted to highlight that I thought was really interesting, and I think is going to hurt Stony Brook in the future, is they kind of had these like ebbs and flows of complacency. Like, I don't know if it's just because they were playing like Drexel, which they shouldn't have. But it's almost like they started out kind of like, oh, whatever, we'll be fine. And then they weren't fine. And then they scored 4 goals in a minute and 26 seconds, and they got it to be like 9-5. And they were like, oh, here we go. We're back on. We're fine. And then it ended up being like 12-9. You know what I mean? Then Drexel would come back. And then Stony Brook was like, oh, crap. We got to like, it was like, I don't know if it was a Drexel ebb and flow, if it was a Stony Brook ebb and flow, if it was a combination of both. But there was this really interesting, like, Drexel would close the gap because they'd find all these holes in the defense, and Stony Brook would turn over, and then like it would get stretched again, and then they would close the gap. And I was like, I don't know I don't know who it was, but I just wanted to bring it up because I thought it was interesting.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because last week, I want to say it was last week, when Stony Brook played Rutgers, they were up 10-2, I want to say, and then it was 12-10. And Rutgers had the ball with a chance to pull within one. And obviously Stony Brook ended up holding on, but it's like, that's not going to work. Yeah. So I don't know. That's interesting. I think also part of the problem with, and I don't know, the problem might seem a little bigger than it is, just because they don't have a goalie that can consistently make stops. It's been a problem all year. They've been rotating goalies all year, and this was just the worst example of it. I mean, 2 saves.
Yeah.
And they're lucky Drexel didn't have. If Drexel would have had even 10 more shots, I mean, it was so bad. Like, Stony Brook, amazing at the draw this season. So they won 21 draws compared to 12 in this game. This season they've won 236 compared to their opponents winning 177. The draw is the strength of their team. Yeah. If they can just get some decent goalie play, they can win the big games, in my opinion. But 2 saves, that just ain't gonna cut it. Like, I don't know I don't even know if I've ever seen a high school game where the goalie only had 2 saves. Like, oh man, it was. Oh,
but I think the takeaway for Drexel for this is also Stony Brook was just their fast break. Drexel couldn't stop a fast break from Stony Brook, especially towards the end. I don't know if it happened in the third or fourth quarter. I don't know if you saw those as much. If you didn't, I can't.
Yeah, if I can just jump in real quick while we're on that point, I thought defensively for Drexel, I thought the positioning was poor. I thought they got caught in la la land a few times, and then just they kept getting lost. I don't want to say they kept getting lost. There were a number of possessions where Stony Brook's movement would just get them lost defensively. And so I don't know if that's because of the young players, if that's a lack of communication, but Katrina Geiger is their defensive coordinator. She's might be the best defensive player in America right now. They have Katie O'Donnell. She might be one of the best 2-way middies in America right now. So I think they'll make those adjustments when they go back and watch the film. But to me, it wasn't so much about what Stony Brook did. It was what Drexel didn't do in this game, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I'd be curious to see how many goals were scored in the first 30 seconds of possession for Stony Brook, because I would be willing to bet it was a lot. I think that there was like a lot of fast break or like settled fast break. Like there was like Drexel's settled defense was actually pretty good. Like Bell stepped up huge a couple times. Like Jenica stepped up. Like people were stepping up in their like settled defense. It was just those like fast breaks. You're right. That seemed to be like a struggle, and I think that's such an easy adjustment that can switch over a couple of goals. And if they're on a fast break going this way and you pick it off and you change that, like now it's a fast break going the other way. And if you can get a shot off in that, it's probably going in. So I do think that was a positive for Drexel, is that like it was a positive for Stony Brook in this game because their fast break was very impressive, but it could be flipped in the games going forward. So I did think
For
that
sure.
was a good one too.
So we've talked a lot about Drexel, just to focus on Stony Brook before we move on to our second topic. What are your takeaways from them? Obviously, you mentioned the ebbs and flows. Is it as simple for them as getting good goalie play? Is it that simple, or what are your thoughts on them?
I just think it's a consistency thing. Like I think goalie play is huge, like obviously huge. But they didn't look as aggressive as I've seen Stony Brook teams in the past. Like they seem to be, even their defense is normally like the problem that you can't even get feeds in is because they're so in your face. Like that front girl is so in your face that you can't even see the open player because she's like so here. And I didn't really see that as much out of them. I was kind of surprised. It just kind of all seemed like they just seemed a little complacent to me. They didn't seem quite as in your face as they normally. I mean, their defense is normally so strong in that like I'm literally right in your face and you can't do anything. And I didn't really see that out of them. So I think it's like just getting that like Stony Brook kind of grit and confidence and cockiness back to them and like playing like that, because it didn't really seem like they had that as much this game, which surprised me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I did think their defense, while they weren't as physical as they normally are, which can be a detriment to them at times when they're fouling a lot inside the 8 meter. I mean, Drexel went to the 8 meter. Did I write that down? Maybe not, but yeah, I don't think I wrote that down. I think they did a good job of dictating Drexel's offensive possessions on a few different occasions where they were dictating the spacing. And I just felt like they were pushed out some, but they weren't like all up in your face, like you were saying. So it was just inconsistent. And then I think Ellie Macera on the fast break is the most dangerous player in college lacrosse. She's so fast. She can score from anywhere. She can dodge from anywhere on the field. She's incredible. Last thing, just defensively, I think Drexel did a really good job of keeping Stony Brook off the 8 meter. Stony Brook only went to the 8 meter 3 times, or they only had 3 8 meter shots, which Ellie Macera passed one up in the third quarter, which I was a little confused about.
They were man up.
Yeah, but that's Ellie Macera, yo. I mean,
yeah, but they're super disciplined with that, I think. I think that Spleen is like really, which they ended up taking an 8 meter anyway at the end of it, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, I think it's because they were man up.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, Stony Brook, they keep going. Drexel, I think that's their first conference loss, I want to say.
It is.
The CAA tournament is at Stony Brook this year, I want to say. And I would love to see a Drexel and Stony Brook rematch. And that would be so much fun because obviously Joe Spleen is a great coach as well. So I would love to see the adjustments that the coaches make and the battle between the coaches.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be good. And yeah. So.
So now we will move on to yay or nay. So in this edition of Yay or Nay, we are going to answer the question, are we all in or all out on these 4 teams following this weekend's games? We have JMU, UVA, Navy, and Penn State. So I will start off. Am I all out on James Madison University after their drubbing loss against Florida? If you can't tell by how I asked the question, I will go ahead and answer it for you.
Yeah, baby.
So yes, I am all out on JMU. Oh my goodness, JMU, you're killing me, okay? They were ceded to the old JMU ways. I think they had 7 goals in the game, and 4 of them were from Isabella Peterson. I would be so fed up if I was 17 and white or purple, whatever jersey color they decide to wear on any given. I'd be so fed up if I were her. It's been like this for 5 years, okay? Like, enough's enough. Coaching staff, do better. Other players, do better, okay? You have everything you need to win a national championship, minus offensive depth. Their goalie yesterday was insane, okay? Just making insane saves. And if you look at the final score, you're like, 14 goals. Yeah, you know why they gave up 14 goals? Because our defense quit in the fourth quarter. It was embarrassing. And I've never said that about any team on this podcast. Their defense literally quit. Go watch the fourth quarter of that game. Go watch the second half of the fourth quarter of that game if you only want to watch a little bit. Their defense quit. It was embarrassing. They gave up. They left their goalie in a terrible situation. And Florida, I mean, they smelled blood in the water. They kept scoring, and good for them. I mean, that's what you're going to do if the team's going to give up defensively. I mean, Jay, I don't know. I don't understand. Why are you giving up defensively? This is a team you know you're going to face again in the conference tournament. I don't understand. It blew my mind to see the lack of effort defensively. I mean, it was just, and the goalie, bless her heart, she played her heart out. She was balling out the whole time. Got no help. The defense quit in the fourth quarter. That's my opinion. That's just my opinion. I don't know if you're listening to this, go watch that game, okay? Just the fourth quarter. But anyways, I'm all out on JMU. Do you have any thoughts on JMU?
No, I agreed. I've been saying all year that, like, Isabella Peterson, the reason I'm so impressed with her is because she's managed to continue to score goals even when everyone knows that she's the one to stop. I think that's really hard to do, and that's why I'm so impressed with her. The problem is that when you play a really good team, that isn't enough, and I think that they've proven that pretty much all of their games, the really good teams, have been able to capitalize because all she's done is score goals. But she, like, not all she's done is score goals. She's scored goals, but that's the only people that have been scoring goals, really. So I continue to, like, be really impressed with her because she's, like, still scoring 4 goals when everyone knows stopping her is stopping JMU. But the problem is everyone knows that, and I don't think you win big games when you rely so heavily on one person. So I was out on them too. I agree.
But that's why I'm confused, because at the start of the season, they scored 19 goals against North Carolina. Obviously, it was a season opener, but, like, they started off the season good with other players scoring. Maddie Upke, she's been amazing at the draw, but you got to be able to score in these big games. And so I feel like JMU, while I'm all out on them, I think they are a wild card come postseason time, because if they happen to get scoring depth, they can beat anyone. I truly believe. But I just don't think they're going to get scoring depth. But, yeah. I mean, if they 3 postseason games, I mean, I would think they could win the first round of the NCAA tournament without scoring depth. Maybe the second, but once you get to the third round, it happened last year against Syracuse. They started off the game strong, and they couldn't get anyone else to score. You got to get other people to score the ball in these big games. So, anyways.
I agree.
Okay, moving on to UVA. Karson, are you all in on the Virginia Cavaliers after beating Boston College this weekend?
I am. Yeah, I really am. I'm really impressed with them this year. I think the Duke loss is really weird to me. That loss by like 3 or 4 or 5 goals, whatever it was, I think it was 4 or 5. It's just strange. Like, I didn't get to watch the game, so I don't know what happened, but that one's weird to me. But I think they're an amazing team. I think they're all in. I think they could be a Final Four, honestly.
What? Karson said what?
I do. I wouldn't be surprised if I feel like Katy Perry on American Idol, where she could be like, you're top 10, like, at auditions. But I think they could be. I mean, there are 2 losses. The other 2 losses besides Duke. Duke's weird. We'll call it a fluke. The other 2 losses were 1-goal games, one of them being in overtime. And then they win to Boston College in overtime. Like, that win could be a really huge win for them, because now, like, you've lost these really tight games, like, consistently. This win comes at a perfect time to flip that script, continue out, finish your season, go into the ACC tournament, and beat those teams. I mean, they're not losing 1 or 2 goal games to scrubs. Like, they're losing these teams to, like, not real, but, like, legit top 10 teams. And it's impressive and it's consistent. Like, they're not losing drastically and winning drastically and losing, and, like, they're consistently up there with the best. and they've proven that they can win those games. I think they've lost them too, but I think that win over BC could be a huge momentum booster for them. Not that they shouldn't have already had it because they were having a great season, but I think that win over BC could really like skyrocket them and give them because that situation is going to happen again. It's probably going to happen against an ACC team, like either in the Elite Eight, Final Four, like in the ACC tournament. That situation is going to happen again, and now they've had the experience to win it. And I do genuinely believe, like, I'm a huge believer in if you've been in those situations and they've succeeded, your confidence is 10 times higher than when you haven't. So I think that win was a huge win for them. I think that if that did anything to me, it pushed me all in on UVA because of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're Final Four come May.
So I agree. I am all in on them as well. Not to the point that I think they'll go to the Final Four, but they very well could. I mean, every team is beatable this season. It has been the craziest season ever. Okay, every team is beatable, and honestly, the top 4 seeds, so the top 3 seeds, I want to say, get the first round bye in the NCAA tournament. The 4th seed does not, but the 4th seed does get to host in the first round. And so I feel like the seeding is so wide open right now. Like I think Northwestern I think they'll get one. I think they're probably the team I'm most confident in to get one of those 4. But then you have BC, you have Notre Dame, you have Maryland, who's coming off a disappointing loss to Penn State. You have Virginia. Loyola might be able to sneak their way in there if the ACC teams keep beating up on each other. So that'll be interesting to see. It's crazy. This has been is crazy. So one thing I will point out about that game yesterday is Rachel Clark left Virginia to go to Boston College. She returns to Virginia for the first time yesterday. I want to say they held her to 1 goal. She was not a factor, and Virginia wins in overtime. Like, how motivated must that Virginia team have been to be like, you thought we weren't going to be good enough. You went to an ACC team that you thought was going to be good enough to win a national championship, and we just beat you. And arguably, we're having a better year than BC is having. And so that is just crazy to me. Like, I love Rachel Clark. I interviewed her, super nice person. I think she's one of the best players in the country. But for UVA, like that is a win. It's more than a win. This is not just a normal win. I mean, and for Rachel Clark, I mean, what is she thinking when she wakes up this morning or when she's on the bus ride home? Like, is there any doubt? Like, oh man, because no one saw this coming for Virginia. So imagine if they had her. Imagine how good they would be. I mean, it is crazy. I mean, oh my goodness, crazy.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, there's probably not any like doubt, I would say, because she's like been like, the choice has been made. Like, there's no reason to be like, oh, hopefully, because that would be hard. That'd be a hard thing to live with. But I would be, but I'm more angry because it would be awesome if UVA had her this year, and then they really might be like Final Four would be a very real possibility. But you also never know how team dynamics like change and things like that, or you never know. It could be because she was so good, they relied so heavily on her, and now like they're playing so much like a team. Like I think their team offense and team defense looks so good. That could be part of it. So like you never really know how team dynamics would change everything if she was there versus wasn't there. But they really impressed me. I think they're a fun team to watch. So
we might need to revisit that conversation of whether or not she regrets it if UVA makes the Final Four run.
I agree. I just thought that when you said that is like if they win, say they just like win the national championship, or they make it. I think if they make
they win the national championship, that's a lifetime regret. I shouldn't laugh, but that's a lifetime regret right there.
Yeah, I think that anything where if they make it farther than BC in the tournament, that's when I think it becomes a little bit of a sting. Like a regular season game, you're kind of like, okay, whatever, we move on. But I think ACC tournament, NCAA tournament, that's when that starts to sting in my head.
Yeah, for sure.
With my 0 experience of doing it. But I think that's where it would.
Awesome. Let's see. Moving on to Navy. Am I all out on Navy despite their win against Army yesterday?
No.
I'm not all out on them. Why would I be all out? They just beat Army. Okay. Not that Army is like some world beaters or anything, but like Navy is doing really good this year. Like they've definitely been better this year than they have been in the past few years. They're ranked in the top 20. They just beat their rival in front of 2,500 people, I will add. The crowd was amazing. Now, what did help is that this is cool. They should do it like this every single season. The Army-Navy men's game was right before the Army-Navy women's game. So you had all these people there anyways. They need to do that every single season because then you have all these people staying and it's just like a whole experience. Like I would love to go, like, I don't care about men's lacrosse, but I would love to go to that just to experience the atmosphere. It was nationally televised on CBS Sports Network. It was awesome. And so anyways, I am not all out on Navy. I am all in on Navy. I think I'm all in on them in the Patriot League, not as far as the I think they can win 1 or 2 games in the tournament. I think that would be a highly successful season for them. I mean, I think it's already been successful, but you know, it always comes down to what you do at the end of the game. Shout out Anna Gotterup, who's been a follower of Lacrosse Extras for a long time. She missed all of last season with, I don't remember the name of it. They mentioned during the broadcast, but she had some clots in her leg. And so she missed all of last season. She's back this year, and she's a dog in them trenches. I love watching me some Anna Gotterup. Okay. So yeah, I'm all in on Navy in the Patriot League. I think, and plus they have a really good goalie. And when you have a really good goalie, anything can happen. So awesome. Moving on to, or do you have any thoughts on Navy before we go to Penn State?
Yeah. So were you saying all in on like them winning the Patriot League?
I think they could win the Patriot League.
Over Loyola?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I was actually out on them because, but I don't know what out meant. Like, I think they'll make the tournament, but like, I'm not as impressed by them because when I was looking at their, like, they've lost to St. Joe's, they've lost to Drexel, they've lost Loyola. They haven't really beat anybody where they could prove themselves.
Drexel's a good team. Don't be hating on my Drexel Dragons now, Karson.
No, but that's a team that like is comparable. Like, that's a team that like, you know, like that's a team where if you win that game, you've proven yourself, in my opinion, because I do think Drexel's a good team. And losing to them, like, that was a 50-50 game that they lost. St. Joe's is a 50-50 game that they lost. Like, Loyola would have been an upset. Like, I think they haven't really proved themselves to be good. But I don't think that necessarily means they're bad. Like, again, I think they'll make the tournament. But if I had to pick all in or out, I picked out for those reasons. But
yes.
I think we kind of agree. We just chose different verbiage to describe it. I think.
Yes, so what I will say, so you're basically saying they lack a signature win, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would kind of agree. I think they have a lot of good ones. They just don't have that one great win. They handled Duke in the season opener. It was a 1-goal game at the end, but they handled them. They beat Richmond by 9, who's ranked.
Yeah.
They lost to Drexel by 1. St. Joe's they beat Holy Cross, who I think is really good. I mean, Holy Cross is having the best season they've ever had, I think. Or at least that in a long time. They lost to Loyola by 5. And if you look at that game, the first quarter, it was 4-3 Loyola. Third quarter, Navy won the quarter 4-2, and they won the fourth quarter 3-2. The difference in that game was the second quarter when Loyola went off for 9 goals. So, I mean, I would love to see that rematch. And I'm also not sure, let's see, that game was at Loyola. So I would like to see that on a neutral site. I don't know where the conference tournament is, but I think, and plus, I think their confidence has to be building. So I would love to see that rematch. So
I agree.
awesome.
I think you'll get it. Like, I think we'll get it. I think they'll be the 2, obviously, in the Patriot League Championship. But anyway.
Awesome. Okay, last but not least, we have the Penn State Nittany Lions. This might be one of the harder teams to figure out this season. Karson, are you all in on Penn State after they beat Maryland? Yay or nay?
Well, yes.
I'm going to go yay. But they're literally...
Yes.
Okay,
But they are literally the definition of inconsistent. Like, they would be the most infuriating team to coach ever. Like, how do you coach them? Because how do you beat Maryland, Northwestern, and then lose to Ohio State and Vanderbilt? And, like,
they lost to Vanderbilt?
I think so.
Okay, you keep talking. I'm going to look that up.
I'm pretty sure they lost to Vanderbilt, but maybe I'm wrong, but I could have looked at that wrong. But either way, Ohio State, Colorado, like Drexel, again, Drexel, love that team. Everyone's doing really well this season. Anybody can beat anybody. But like, if you win over Maryland, Northwestern, you should be winning those games, in my opinion. So I think but I'm in on them because I think they have it. Like, kind of like what you said about JMU. Like, they have it. They just have to show us that they have it, and they haven't done that consistently. But I'm all in on them because I think they could randomly kill it. Like if they get on a hot streak in the NCAA tournament, like, or even in the Big Ten tournament, like they've proven they could beat Maryland Northwestern. Like, I don't know. I chose in, but again, like that's kind of one of those things that what the definition of in is can be played with to be in or out. But I chose in because they have 2 huge wins, and if it happens twice, it's typically not a fluke. So we'll see.
So they did beat Vanderbilt by 1, which
Oh,
they should have beaten them more by that. So they beat Maryland by 1, Vanderbilt by 1, Northwestern by 1, Cornell by 1, Rutgers by 1, and they have 2 1-goal losses. So all their games are close. I mean, it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could easily, what is their record? They're 8-6. They could easily be 11-3. They could easily be 5-9. I mean, it's like they play it to the level of their competition. Okay. Let's see. They only lost to Loyola by 4, Drexel by 2. They only beat Lehigh by 2. They should have lost to Rutgers, but that's neither here nor there. They beat Cornell by 1. I mean, I don't know. Like, you beat the number 1 team in the country at the time. You beat the number 4 team in the country at the time. They're a tough team, and they're going to make things very interesting come at-large bid time, which leads us into our next topic. So this is going to be great. So yay or nay, that's a wrap for today. Moving on to topic number 3, our final topic of the episode, conference bid predictions. We have ACC, Big Ten, Ivy, and Patriot League.
And
Megan,
Pac-12.
Yes, Pac-12. So we have those 5. Megan, were you able to see how many teams make the tournament? Is it 28 or 29?
29.
Oh,
29. Okay, sweet. Thank you very much. That's why we
You're
have
welcome.
fact checker Meg here, because she's gonna keep us honest. Okay, so 29 teams make the tournament. So there are 15 conferences. That means 15 automatic bids. That means there are only 14 at-large bids, which things are going to get very tight, and we will explain why as we move through this segment. ACC, Karson, how many teams get in? I have 6.
oh, I have 5.
Ooh,
And I thought
who do you-
I have Syracuse, Notre Dame, Boston College, UVA, and UNC. And I think UNC, the reason I don't have Duke in there, because technically they're probably about on the same level this year. And I think the only reason UNC is getting in is because their name is UNC. Like, I don't think they deserve to be in it at all with their wins and
Really?
losses. Maybe in it. But, like, I think their name being UNC helps them a ton there.
I agree.
And I think, like, Duke, maybe. I think Duke's like a bubble team. I think UNC's in simply because UNC is their name, and then Duke's kind of a bubble team for me. That was where I was at.
Yeah. So I think obviously UNC's name will help them, but I also think they are one of the 29 best teams in the country and one of the 14 best at-large teams. So yeah, I have Duke or Clemson, but as you talked about that, they really are both bubble teams. Which it's really weird because if Duke hadn't beaten UVA, they wouldn't be in the conversation, in my opinion. But they have that win, and that's a signature win. But they also lost to Clemson 20-11. It was very early in the season, but I mean, I don't know. Let's see. Duke is 10-6, 4-4 in the conference. Clemson is 9-6, 2-6 in the conference. So I feel like I think you have to say, I would say Clemson's better than Duke, but Duke has a better record and a better overall top win. So I don't know, the Duke Clemson, I think one of them might get in, but I wouldn't be surprised if neither one of them did. It'll be interesting to see how Duke finishes the season.
I mean, they could do well. I think Duke will get in if they do well in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, if they just win. Yeah, if they win one game in the ACC tournament, I think they'll be fine. Yeah,
one game, you think?
It depends who it's against.
I guess because their one game will probably be against someone legit because their rank won't be great. So yeah, I would agree with you.
So you have 5 teams. I have 6, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 5 either.
Yeah.
Okay. Big Ten. How many teams did you have?
I have 4.
Ooh, I have 5. Who do you have? Who do you have not making it? Let's say that.
Well, I should give you who I have.
Okay.
I don't know everybody in the I don't have the whole conference listed out. I think Michigan makes it, Northwestern makes it, Maryland makes it. Those three are for sure for me. And then I think Penn State or Hopkins. I'm in either or there because I think because they're both pretty inconsistent. Like Hopkins has kind of had some ups and downs, Penn State's had some ups and downs, and they haven't played each other yet. So in my head, whoever wins that game might get an at-large bid. And the other one and I think the other one becomes a bubble team. Like I think whoever wins is more like definitely in, and then the other one's kind of on the bubble. Probably more so if Hopkins wins and Penn State loses, then I think Penn State becomes, or
Yeah.
the other way around. I think if Penn State wins and Hopkins loses, Hopkins is a bubble team. That's what my thought process was.
Okay. So Johns Hopkins has one game left this season. It's on April 20th at Penn State. So I feel like if they win that game, they're in over Penn State. Like if you had to choose between the two, I think Hopkins is in no matter what. I just think they're very good. I mean, they lost to Michigan by 4 today. It was a 2-goal game late in the fourth. They lost to Maryland by 5. Beat JMU, lost Northwestern by 5. Beat Stony Brook. They beat a Vanderbilt team 21-3, and Penn State only beat Vanderbilt 12-11. So
yeah.
They beat USC, who's okay. They lost to Penn by 1. They lost to Loyola by 3. I just think Hopkins is in no matter what. And so where it gets tricky for me is Penn State. Because on one breath, there's no way you can have a win against the number 1 ranked team in the country on the road. Or no, that was at home, actually, I think. A win against the number 1 ranked team in the country, and then go on the road and beat the number 4th ranked team in the country and not make it. However, I don't know.
That's why I think if they lose to Hopkins, they're out. Because but if they beat Hopkins and Hopkins is a good win, I don't know. That's kind of where my head was.
And let's see. And so they only have one game left in the regular season as well against Hopkins. So, oh man, it's so crazy because there's been so much parity this year that the ACC and the Big Ten, they might hog all the at-large bids because they've all beat each other. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And then, just real quick on this one team, I feel so bad for Rutgers. They are 6-8. They're done. The only way they're making the tournament is if they win the Big Ten. And they've had so many close games. The loss to Hopkins was so painful to watch.
That was heartbreaking.
I mean, so heartbreaking. They should have won that game, and they should have beaten Penn State. And then they were in the game against Stony Brook late. I mean, they lost to Princeton by 3, lost to Michigan by 3, Maryland by 5. I mean, the only game they've gotten handled in was Northwestern when they lost by 11. Every other game, they've been in the game. And it's like, I feel so bad for Cassidy Spillis. So I hate it for them because I think they're one of the top 20 best teams. I think if you match them up with Penn State again, I think they win. If you match them up with Hopkins again, I think they win. But they haven't won anything, so there's just no way they're getting in. So I hate it for Cassidy Spillis. We had her on the podcast. I hate it for it. Okay. Keeping things moving. 3 conferences left. Ivy League. I have 3 teams.
Me too. I had Yale, Princeton, and Penn.
Okay. What do you think of Harvard? Because they're on the bubble as well.
I was almost put it 4, but Harvard's schedule is significantly weaker than Penn's schedule. They have the same record, but Penn's wins are significantly more meaningful than Harvard's wins. So that's why I didn't put them in there. I just didn't think that they had enough strength of schedule to maybe get like 4th in their conference. And then if they have an insane conference tournament, then maybe, but I didn't think they were a strong enough strength of schedule.
And if you look at it, let's go by their 4 biggest games of the season. They beat Brown. Brown has kind of teetered off a little bit, so take that as you will. 18-17. They lost to Duke 15-13, but then the 2 games I really want to focus on are Penn and Yale. They lost to Penn by 10. They lost to Yale by 8. So, and both of those are tournament teams, and so they have a good record, but they don't have any good wins. You can count the Brown game, but like I said, Brown's been teetering off. They just got drubbed by Penn State. Scored 17 goals in the first half, And the only reason they didn't get to 30 is because it was running clock the whole second half. I think they finished with 23. I mean, it was the refs were terrible in that game. Don't get me wrong, but it was bad. Like, it was bad. I think they played 4 goalies. 4. At least 3. I think it was 4. I watched the whole thing. I think it was 4. It was crazy. Yeah, wow. So yeah, I think Harvard, they've had a great season, but I just don't think it's enough for them to get in. So I have 3 as well. Okay, Patriot League. This one, I'll let you go first. This one's interesting. I think you're gonna say 2, but I'm gonna have. Is that what you got?
Yeah, I have Loyola Navy.
Okay. So you don't have Holy Cross.
No. Only because I think that they have to. I don't know. I didn't actually even. Honestly, this could be a me problem because I didn't even really consider them because normally their strength of schedule isn't strong enough. Like for me, you have to have some signature wins if you're going to be like. I know for us to get an at-large bid in the like we had to have our breakout season where we beat like really big teams before Drexel was considered to get an at-large bid. Like as soon as that happened and we had that breakout season, then all of a sudden we were getting at-large bids. Like last year they got an at-large bid. Like all of a sudden now our name's in the conversation, but I feel like you have to have like, and maybe they have, and I'm not aware of them because I haven't really looked to be honest, but I don't, that's kind of where I am in that sense.
The Holy Cross Crusaders, okay? They are 10-3. They are 7-0 on the road. And they do have a top 20 win, top 25 win. It might be top 20. Fairfield. They beat Fairfield to start the season 17-16.
That's not big enough. I don't think that's big enough.
Hey, I'm not done.
All right.
Be patient over there, Karson. They did get drubbed by Stanford 19-7 at home. If they would have beaten Stanford, I would say it's a lock. Let's see. They beat UMass, who UMass is going to be an interesting bubble team. I don't think they should get in, but their name might get them in.
I have them as a bubble team too.
Let's see. So, I mean, they haven't been dominant in any other games, but they only lost to Navy by 4. They have Army, Loyola, and Boston University to finish. So if they beat Loyola, I'd say they're in.
That's fair.
Not that I go over their schedule, they really haven't been dominant. They only beat Lafayette by 1. They beat Colgate by 2. I don't know.
I feel
Maybe
like only because they haven't been a dominant team in the past. Like to put yourself on that radar, I feel like you have to be in the top 25 first. You know what I mean? Like that's just like then I'm just speaking anecdotally there. Like Drexel could have done all we wanted, but as soon we had to make them talk about us before we were considered about anything. I feel like that's kind of that's normally where my baseline is for stuff like that. But
okay, I'm sorry to Holy Cross and Coach Amanda Belichick. Karson has convinced me that you are not going to make the tournament this year.
Which doesn't happen often. I don't typically convince you of things. So.
Okay, moving on to the Pac-12, which is our final conference, and then just like a few teams I want to touch on quickly after that. So Pac-12, I have 2 teams.
Me too.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it's 1. I just think they got to get 2 because they're the Pac-12.
Yeah, and I think Stanford and USC always like.
Those are your 2?
Those are my 2. Yeah.
So I have Stanford. I think they're going to win the conference. But then I have the winner of USC Colorado.
That's fair.
Which
I think
they haven't played each other yet in the regular season. And the Pac-12 is interesting because I want to say it's like 4 teams make it, so you just have the semis and the championship. So they could have a rematch in the Pac-12 tournament. But I think Colorado's the better team. USC, they don't have any signature wins. I don't think. I mean, they've been ranked the whole season, but I don't know if they've really beaten anyone. That's fair. So I think Colorado's better, but they're gonna have to beat them, and they might have to beat them twice. Because if you win the first one and then you lose the second one, then people are just gonna be like, oh well, the better team won the second time. You make adjustments, blah blah blah. So.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I didn't put Colorado in there because I didn't think they had enough signature wins. So if they beat USC, that would count, and I could see how that would be in their favor. I guess they beat Penn State. That counts. That was their signature win.
Which is why Penn State is so crazy because.
Yeah, I don't know if Penn State can count as a signature win because every game is so close with them.
Yeah. Okay, so what that adds up to, let's see. So you had 5 in the ACC, correct?
Yeah.
You had 5 in the ACC. Then we agreed on the rest. 5 in the Big Ten, 3 in the Ivy, 2 in the Patriot, 2 in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
So that adds up I'll just say I said 5 as well for the ACC just for math purposes. So that adds up to 12 at-large bids. That means there are 2
I had only 4 in the Big Ten, so I think I only had 11.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
did Penn State Hopkins.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that means so I had 12 at-large bids taken care of. You had 11. So that means you have 3 bids remaining. I have 2, and I have 3 teams for those bids. I have the loser of JMU Florida. I think they're a lock to get in.
Yeah.
So that means I have 1 left. You have 2. I have Drexel because Navy's also an at-large team. Drexel beat Navy.
And Penn State.
Penn State. Yes. They did lose the Penn 11-8. If they would have won that game, I would say it's not even a conversation, which I still think they should be good. But when you never really know when you're on the bubble. Like last year, you were shocked when Towson didn't make it and Drexel did. So when you're on the bubble, like it's like you really want to leave no doubt, because if you're on the bubble, you just don't know what's going to happen. So I think Drexel should make it. So that would be my final at-large team. But then the other team that's on the edge is UMass because of their name. And I don't even know how they're in the conversation. They started off like dog poo to start this year. And now I think they've won 7 in a row in their conference. I think they're undefeated in conference. And so like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
That's really funny. We actually were pretty good. We agreed a lot on this. I had JMU and I had Drexel. I said Drexel has to beat Hofstra. Which I think they should, but I think they have to be Hofstra, and I think they have to keep it close. Like I don't think Stony Brook can blow them out in the conference championship. So I said Drexel, JMU, and then I had 1 more because I put Hopkins or Navy, and I said either I did, but in here I put my other bubble team like might be Hopkins / Navy, like whoever loses. I kind of just bumped them into a maybe like on the bubble team instead of putting them in my picks. But I put UMass or Hopkins / Navy. As my other one. So we agreed pretty much.
It's a new day on the player and the journalist.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We really did.
And so this is all going to happen really quickly in the next few weeks. We're nearing the end of the regular season. Conference tournament is starting. And then I want to say that's like the last week of April, first week of May, I want to say, depending on the conference. It's like right around there. So we're not going to have to wait too long to see how these conferences play out. And what we're not planning for in any of this is upsets. And so who knows what's going to happen. Also, the game I'm really looking forward to that I hope happens is in the America East tournament. I want to see UMBC and UMass Lowell play again. They played once this year. There's a lot of trash talk. I want to see them play again, and I'm pulling with UMass Lowell. Okay, so that's what I want to see. And right now, if the conference tournament started today, UMBC is the 1 seed, UMass Lowell is the 4 seed. They would play each other. It would be a dream.
That's funny.
Awesome. Megan, fact checker Meg, do you have any corrections for us? Hopefully not, but did we make any mistakes on today's episode?
No, you did not.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. I love Meg when she says that. Okay.
No, it's all you guys. You did great.
Awesome. Do you have any thoughts on anything that we talked about? Any hot takes?
No, I barely watched any games this week. So it's been a long week.
Okay, fair. One question I will ask you then, do you think UNC is going to get into the tournament, or do you think they should be in the tournament?
I think they're not. I don't think because of the name they're going to get in. They're not playing well.
Interesting. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Thank you so much. This has been episode 40. We are nearing the 50 mark. Okay. 40 episodes are in the book. Thanks for listening. And please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. We would love for you to leave a review. Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Did you enjoy this episode of The Player and the Journalist? If so, please leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.